All right. Hi there, everybody, and welcome to today's Grim Litany of Librarians. Today I'm joined by Peter Rudin Burgess. Did I say your name right, Peter?
Burgess.
Burgess. Yeah, and today we're going to be talking about fleshing out NPCs. Peter, go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I own, or basically I am, parts per million. I specialise in writing solo RPG materials. I write a few games, and I write for community content programs, mainly adventures and things for Zweihander. But I cover about 20 different community content programs, providing unique content for them.
All right. And you also specialize in, what is it, solo RPGs, right?
Solo is my big thing, yeah.
All right, so today we're not doing it solo. Today we are here to talk about doing NPCs and how we can create various NPCs. I mean, as everybody knows, like, your characters need NPCs to interact with. So we're going to cover a couple of ways that we come up with these NPCs. My preferred method is what I call the C-Man method, which basically it's six questions that I ask myself at the when I'm creating an NPC. What's their standing? What's their education? What's their ancestry? What's their motivation? What's their what extra information is there? Like what are their pronouns? And then what's their name? Which is good. Which is a good starting point for me. But Peter, what methods do you use?
I use a 3-point, almost like 3 bullet points. Who they are, what they want, and what they're going to do to get it. And so I'm more concerned about the impact that NPC is going to have on the character's world, and less about, as you say, their standing and education. And one of the things that I always hold in my mind is that no written adventure is going to survive first contact with the characters, and it isn't even going to survive the first reading of the game master that's going to run it. Because Zweihander has no real default setting, anything I write is going to be parachuted in to somebody else's world. And if you start pinning down facts, it might not fit. But if I can say, like, this is what the character needs to be, and this is what they want, and this is how they intend to get it, I'm hoping that the game master will go, yes, so they went to this place and they know that person, and that's how they would achieve it. So it's much looser than your structured yours cascades down, doesn't it, through kind of from inception to the name is the last piece.
Yeah.
Once they're complete, mine is more about their function than their what they look like. Obviously I'll give them a name, but they are. It's all about their function inside the adventure that I'm concerned about, and that's how I see my NPCs, their functions.
That's an interesting way of looking at it, because, like, essentially, like, that's what they are. They serve a function. And to contextualize the world outside of, like, go here and crunch these numbers to defeat this monster here. Because, I mean, even like enemies, those are still NPCs.
Yeah. Everything's anything that the characters can interact with intelligently is a NPC. If the game master has to play it, then it's a non-player character if it's got a character.
Right. So like, so when you're doing your 3-point structure here, you said that the most important information for you is what they want and how they're gonna do it. And what was that third one?
That is the thought. It's who they are,
Who they are,
what they want,
and
and how they intend to get it.
right.
The most important bit is the middle one, because I'm quite happy for any game master to change who they are.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to parachute this adventure into an elven forest, then that character is likely to be an elf. If you want to parachute it into an Arabian Night setting, then it could well be a sultan or a thief or anyone in that setting. So who they are is very malleable. I suppose it's a little bit more like your standing side of it. If I say that they need to be wealthy because of what comes later, then a game master can say, okay, it's a wealthy merchant, it's a wealthy ambassador, whatever. They can mold that bit, but they've got the key piece of information. For me, the important bit is as long as the game master knows what they want to achieve, what the character needs to achieve, then however badly the characters ruin that person's day,
Mm-hmm.
the game master's got what they need to improvise. If the NPC is on the back foot and has to change their plan because you know what they actually really want and what they're prepared to do for it, then you can start improvising. So it doesn't matter what the characters try to do to your world, you will still get there, or the characters or the NPCs will stop them, or the NPC will go with the characters up until a certain point. Once they've achieved what they want, their motivation might wane, their enthusiasm might die off a bit if it becomes apparent that they aren't going to get what they need out of it, or they've already achieved it and they're going into danger for no reason. So whether they're a sidekick hero or the villain, if you know what they want, that is the most important bit for me, that middle section.
Right. Um, which that makes sense because really when you're like when you're playing tabletop games, those are like a thing of improvisation, right? Like you're doing this stuff. It's a group improv game, right?
Yes. Definitely.
So so when you are outlining your characters using your 3-point method, do you ever like put in like your adventures, do you ever put like this point, like if the character hasn't gotten this information, or this part of their motivation hasn't been met yet, they sort of decide that it's time for them to start like backing away and leaving? Or how do you handle that?
I Yes, I sometimes put in kind of conditional suggestions. I had one today where an NPC is at the outset unlikely to assist the characters, but in a later scene, I've said, look, there would be a conflict of interest at this point, and this is the side they're more likely to fall down on if that situation arises. So yes, you can fill that in, but it's within the context of what was explained at the start of the when the NPC was introduced.
Right.
So you've got a broad picture, but yeah, I will give the NPCs, the game masters, pointers as to what I think my version of that NPC would do. But if it doesn't fit, the game master's not going to do it. So it's just kind of it's there, but
right.
Yeah.
you're
Whether they use it or not is a different matter.
you put a lot of emphasis on modularity, and as you said, like the game masters, they might like ignore like what you write out, and because they're dropping it, like especially with Zweihander, because they're dropping it into their own setting. Um,
Mm.
is that something that you do when you're adapting other people's works into your games as well? Like you go, okay, this thing I don't like this thing, so I'm going to adjust it and change it.
Yes, definitely. I don't use a lot of published adventures.
Mm-hmm.
I generally homebrew just about everything. Um, but um, I if I've got some published material that I want to use, then yeah, it's unlikely to survive a first read through. I'll start slapping notes all over it, or you know, redlining bits.
Right.
So yeah, I think every game is unique. And it's I play a lot of different games, and I see a lot of different ways of solving things, and I like to import those bits into. It, I treat everything in life really as quite modular. So if I see something and I can adapt it, I think right, this game it would be better with that in it. I will include it, and then once you've decided I'm going to adopt that method or a technique, then no published thing for that game will ever have those tweaks that I've included. So yeah, I will start you know bolting that in, and yeah, so I change just about everything.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm the same way myself. Like, I've talked about it several times, like in the Discord or on Twitter or like even last episode with Tyler, I talked about how I frequently change things that I don't like. And like I personally rarely do that with NPCs, unless it's something that I particularly do not want in my games at all. Um, so it's and even then, like I try and keep it to the format that I'm presented with.
Mm.
So hmm, when you're so like how many NPCs do you usually decide to write whenever you're like do you have a set number that you try and like go for? Is it changed for each session or not each session rather
No,
each adventure?
I detail the NPCs that I need, and I generally keep the cast small,
Mm-hmm.
um, just to give the game master less to worry about. Um, but yeah, I don't like detailing. Yeah, I keep it small. I think the last adventure I wrote, the last one I published, that had two NPCs, and the one I wrote today, which will be published on Wednesday, that has two NPCs, three if you include the monster.
Right. Now,
Yeah,
you said three if you include the monster. Um,
it's an intelligent monster. You
it's an
can
intelligent
talk to it.
monster.
You can, yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
where I was going. So and that brings up another point. Like, and what like for you, you've said that like if the players can interact with it in what was it? Um, if the players can interact it with it, and it has intelligence, I think is what you said, or something like that. You consider it an NPC, and so clearly, like, but you do acknowledge that some people then don't necessarily view it the same way.
oh, definitely.
Is your preference for viewing even even intelligent monsters, is your preference for viewing them as NPCs as well? Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is
Yes.
yes. Okay.
Yeah. I think an intelligent monster that, or even a semi-intelligent monster that, if it has got motivational drives, if it wants to survive, if it's hungry and it wants food, or it's feels pain and it wants to live, it will start making choices. The minute it starts making choices, it is a character. So yeah, you could have a cow, just a cow. Um, Now that cow could sit there completely docile, chewing the cuds and mooing occasionally, um, and it could get the hump one day and it could kick a character. And it's a fairly docile. It is a farm cow.
Right.
But you put that cow enraged in the middle of a crowded marketplace, and it is scattering people left, right, and center, and it is charging down streets. And then at that point, that cow is a major problem. Um, and the characters exist to solve problems.
Right.
But you can play that cow, and a cow is generally not that intelligent. Not on a, you know, I'm sure people would argue the point, but it's still it plays a function in that adventure, so it has to be there and it has to exist. From that point on, it's going to make choices, and the game master is the only person that can make those choices for it. So from that point on, Daisy the cow is an NPC.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Because as you said, it's making choices. Like if it's enraged, it's making choices to charge at this location instead of that location.
Yeah, that red cloak that you bought could be a real problem at that point.
Right.
It's
So when it comes to your NPCs, do you have a preference for like any particular ancestry or anything like that, or you just sort of like just leave that blank for the game master to?
I if it is vitally important for a reason, then I will specify it. If it is not vitally important, then I won't. If I think I had an adventure. I don't think it was a Zweihander one, but it was one where a weapon could only be wielded by an elf.
Mm-hmm.
So the the genuine heir to that weapon had to be an elf, otherwise the adventure didn't work.
Right.
And the characters had to go and retrieve the weapon, uh, but it had to go back to the elf. So that was kind of all written in. Although a game master could have crossed out elf and put dwarf there, and they could have crossed out elf over here and put dwarf there, and it would still have worked.
Right.
But for the most part, I don't specify ancestries. In Zweihander, it is so easy to change someone's ancestry, or even their career. It's just swap out a few traits here and there, and you're good to go.
Right. Like.
So yes, fine.
I was gonna say yeah. Right. Like because I've done that myself. With like characters that I've written, like they were like I have a golem character in one adventure, but like nobody knows that they're a golem because they just they look like a really big person. So like, but like I wrote them like they were like a person, not like they were like the golem in the Zweihander book. So it's really easy to do that.
Yes. It's useful that it's easy to do that and change the the ancestry. Because if you look in the corrupted souls part of the Zweihander core rules, there's things like the Templar fanatic and the thug and occultist, but they have no ancestry.
Right.
If you wanted an elven occultist, then you have to layer the elven traits on top. If you wanted a dwarven Templar fanatic, you have to make it yourself. And they're all kind of like generic bland human. Um, so yeah, it's if you have to do that for any kind of regionalized flavor, so once you're in the dwarven kingdoms, the thugs are going to be dwarves. The bandits you meet are going to be dwarves. Everyone's going to be dwarvish. So you may as well just layer on dwarf on top. So once you get game masters that you are running Zweihander have to do that, or just use the stats off the page. So yeah, it's a skill that most game masters either don't care about or they can do it. There's no middle ground really.
Right. And I follow along the line of I use the stats presented in the book for like the stat block for like the brigand. I use the stats for that, but I like if it's not a human brigand, I'll go, oh, this elvish brigand here is the leader of this group of bandits. And I would specifically call it out, but I won't change like any of the stats in there because like that's a lot of that's work that I don't necessarily need to do if it's like not a major NPC character. Like it's major for that session, sure, but it's not necessarily major in the grand scope of things.
No, it's what the characters see, so what the players see in their mind's eye. That's the important bit. Whether a number is one higher or one lower, whether a skill changes or whatever, makes very little. Sorry, makes very little difference. So I don't get hung up on it. It's what the characters see, it's what the players see for their character that's important to me.
Right, and I have read some of your work, and I can definitely contextualizes some of what I've seen, like with your I think it was the one-page adventure, Meet Me on the Battlements. That was one of yours, right?
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, it
like,
was.
None of it was nothing mentioned in there was like any. I don't believe there were any ancestries, which I mean it's important because it's a one-page adventure, so like that's extra information that you don't necessarily need.
That's it. A one-page adventure is a coat hanger or a skeleton. You can in Meet Me on the Battlements. I believe there was a scene in a tavern. There is a potential scene outside because there was a hidden extra character, and then there was the keep, and there was some horrible dark stuff going on in the keep, and a meeting on the battlements. Funny enough, you can explode any one of those scenes up into as much detail as you need. When I think in my head, when I'm writing an adventure, it's either a Friday adventure or it's a Monday adventure. If you buy an adventure on a Friday, you might want to run it 3 hours later. So if it's 58 pages, you are not going to be able to read that, absorb it, and customize it to your game in 3 hours. But if you buy a one-page adventure, yeah, you can read that on the bus home, and it can be ready to play.
I think that's actually what I did.
And if you want to squish that in, if you can probably read it on your phone, it's not, it's just one piece of paper, two sides. That's it. You can probably do that in 3 hours, that adventure, or you can do it in 3 sessions or 4 sessions. There was there's the castle in there, the old family keep. You could, spend a whole session exploring that keep, meeting the dark stuff going on downstairs, and then the final thing on the battlements. and you can expand that into 3 sessions. The whole the interaction with the NPCs. But the NPCs are the most important bit of that whole thing. Um, a Monday adventure is a 58 pager or a
Right.
30 pager. So you've had your session at the weekend, and you want something new. You buy it on the Monday. You've got all week to read it and tweak it and change it and get it to work. If it needs prep, that's it. You got a whole week's worth there. But one pages are designed to be played in 1 to 3 sessions, and read it on the bus or read it in your lunch break. But they are all about the NPCs, and those NPCs, because that's what the characters want to interact with other people in this world. The only thing that's going to make your world seem alive are the characters that the game master introduces and plays. So yeah, I don't give a lot of information, but you know what they want. You know why they're going to meet them on the battlements, and that is the key fact. And the person out in the darkness, you know what they want and
Right.
why they're there. Um, so, and you know why she's there. Is it her that's in the tavern?
I think so. Yeah, I think
Yeah, it is.
she's an
Yeah, it's
occultist,
her
right?
that's in the tavern. Yeah, yeah. So you yeah, she is an occultist straight out of the book. There's no stats for her. I didn't roll her up. Because the game master doesn't need to do that. There's a perfectly good
Yeah.
occultist in the book. Yeah, but that could be an elven castle. It could be a dwarvish fortress. You can change all that, but it's what makes it interesting is what's driving her, what's driving him, what is going to happen, and the bit in between is just waving your sword around.
Yeah. Just yeah. Um, that's a good way of putting it. Waving your sword around. Because a lot of times, like, that's how, uh, like, if you're not doing a social encounter, that's how a lot of other games as well. That's like usually the outcome. Like, a lot of people who I hang around with in the independent game development circles, they talk about how D&D, for example, is a game about killing things first and foremost because that's what has the most rules supported for it. So it's been a really interesting thing to see that play out and see how other systems also provide, like Zweihander provides the social intrigue rules for interacting with NPCs where you're not waving your swords around in their faces. Do you feel like those sort of things, like having those sort of systems in the game that you're running, do you feel like those help influence your character design for your NPCs?
My preferred way of I'm a rulings not rules person. So there may well be a lot of social interaction rules in a rule book, but there's a very good chance there'll be no finger smudges on those pages. If you want to tell me what you're saying and how you're saying it and how you're coming across to this NPC, and I know what that NPC, what their motivations are, it will work or it won't work. And social interaction rules, I find more likely to inhibit the role playing. The one time I am inclined to fall back onto rules is if I am playing with a player that finds the actual role playing side of it awkward or uncomfortable, and then I will not let them. I would even encourage them to just because you may be uncomfortable speaking in character in front of these strangers, your character isn't. So yes, you roll the dice. But for the most part, I generally play with people that I've known for a very long time,
Mm-hmm.
and we can role play in full Technicolor, and so I don't really need the dice. On the other hand, if the character is an astrophysicist and there's a really complicated sciencey type problem, and the player is a store manager from a supermarket, he may not be able to solve that problem. So that's when you need to use the astrophysics skill. So it's a kind of halfway. uh, I'm not that keen on rolling for social interaction if I can help it. D&D's got the most combat rules because you can't really role play combat.
Mm-hmm.
It has rules for casting fireball because I've never yet met a role player that can actually cast a fireball. If we could do it for real, we wouldn't need the rules.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't need rules for talking because that's the one thing that we can all do for hours and hours. 4 hours in a session, and we all talk quite happily. So we don't really need the rules for it.
Right.
Reanimating the dead, we're not so good at, but yeah.
Okay. I mean, and that makes sense. Because like I know that I believe it was Vampire the Requiem. They had the doorway system, I think, for social interactions. And like a lot of the language there was uncomfortable to read, even like as a player to understand. Like reading, like, okay, this sounds really bad. Like I know what they're trying to go for, but this makes me uncomfortable. So with the but like the social intrigue rules with this Zweihander, they didn't quite make me feel uncomfortable reading them. It made more sense. It was just like an outline for how to provide yourself with this information. So, which sounds like it's more or less that's what you do.
It does, but yeah, what I don't do is I don't overwrite the rules.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't say, oh well, you have to make this skill check to achieve this task.
Right.
I would much rather, if you want to use those social interaction rules, yeah, you can do it. If you want to just role play it, you can just role play it. But then in a one-page adventure, you're not going to get a huge amount. It's one page, but the middle column is normally the map.
Right.
Yeah, and then there's a little bit of art just because I hate empty space.
Right.
So yeah, I think on average those adventures are 1,600 words. When you don't get stat blocks because I pull stuff out. I just tell you the page. Just go to the page, go and get it, and everyone's got the rule book, so why reproduce it?
Right.
So yeah, I generally, they are fairly minimalist, but they should give you enough to play out that adventure or play out your version of that adventure and your version of those NPCs. In most of my NPCs have a stat block that is in the core rulebook, so I don't stat them out. I can just say, oh well, this one uses that stat, or there's in the last one I wrote, there was a sergeant, and he uses the deserter stats because that's a perfectly good soldier, as far as I'm concerned. He's not a deserter; he's just using those stats. But that gives you the what function he plays in the story, and if you want to talk to him, then fine, or her or whatever. You can muck about whatever you want, make him dwarf, elf, male, female, whatever, because he is just a function and a stat block, in the book, and it's the what they do in the story that's important, or whether they get to do it, or whether the characters stop them, or interfere, or whatever. That's the interaction. So yeah, in 1600 words, you're not going to get a huge amount of retooling the rule book. And yeah, you use the social interaction if you want. You rarely get chases in mine either. But the game master, if you're going to run it, you'll recognize when a chase starts,
Hmm.
and you can apply the chase rules. But I rarely define them as a chase,
Right.
um, because it might not happen. The characters might shoot them dead before they've taken 2 steps. So
Yeah, that's something that I've experienced as well. Like in playtesting for my adventures, like I had set up a chase scene in the book, um, and like okay, if they do it this way, this is gonna happen. But what they ended up doing was they unknowingly camped in the direction that the beast was gonna head when the chasing initiates. And they'd also camouflaged themselves, so they had basically hidden their camp and were just gonna wait at this area. And so instead of just doing a chase scene, I was just like, okay, let's reward the players, and it's not a chase scene, that it runs right at them by accident, and then they kill it, and they ended up killing it because it's designed. It's the boss encounter of the adventure, but it's designed to be an easy adventure because it's an introductory adventure.
mm,
So it definitely, like, you can say, yeah, there's a chase scene here, but if the players don't like start the chase scene, they do something different, then it sort of falls apart.
yes. But then equally, if you if your characters had been at the opposite end and it had set off and they wanted to chase it, then you would have created the chase scene,
Yeah.
even if you hadn't written it. So yeah, I think if you like those rules, then and you're comfortable with those rules, then they make sense. They're really good. The chase scenes are really good. I love the Zweihander overland travel. That I've adopted that into other games. Um, but I sometimes hint at it. I might tell you whether the terrain is easy terrain or not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I would rarely define it down to how many legs or what difficulties,
Right.
because some people don't like them, and if you do like it and you know those rules and you're comfortable with it, but also you might be running my adventure, which I wrote as a introductory level. You might be running it for some intermediate characters, and so you might want to crank up all the difficulties a little bit just to create some challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, in a way, the less you define, the more flexibility you have for the game master. Um, but yeah, that's um, it's just the way I work, and it's a limited format. There's only so much that I can do in one of those. But I still think it's about the people. It's not about your wagon train or your horse's leg falling off. It's about the people that you're interacting with. That's when the game master gets to play, because we're all players really.
Yeah, exactly. We're all players that's at the table.
Mm.
So one thing that you mentioned early on, like you mentioned that it doesn't necessarily matter, like if the NPC has different skills from the stat block. I mean, like it doesn't matter if you don't need to change it. It doesn't matter. But that had me thinking, like, whenever you write your adventures, and you have NPCs that accompany the players, do you ever use the NPCs as like a safety net, or like encourage the GMs to use the NPCs as a safety net in case they fail a check or something?
Yes, yes, I will occasionally make sure there is an NPC with the required skill available, just because I don't want to insist that one of the characters has to have whatever skill it is. Um, So yeah, I will if some. I hate making things required.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, that's when start things start to become railroady if you're not careful.
Right.
Um, and so you let's say if a lock has to be picked, then obviously there has to be someone that can pick the lock. Yeah, but I would often then maybe have a way where you could actually find the key, um, and build that in
Hmm.
to the adventure. But yes, I will. I will give. I might say, it's this this stat block, but take off this skill and put this one in instead. And so it might have 5 plus 10s, and I can swap out scrutinize and stick in whatever I need.
Right. Like skullduggery.
So yes, I will tweak them. Yeah, that's it. Yes, so I will do that.
Okay. And so one of the um, one of the things that I know comes up in discussion sometimes with regards to NPCs who accompany the player characters is their role in combat. What is your usual way of handling that? Like, do you have them interact in the combat, or do you have them sort of like fight their own fight on the side, or
Um, I quite like having them fight their own fight on the side, and I will often reduce their entire fight down to a single dice roll.
mm-hmm.
Um, I assess their opponent, and think, okay, they've got a 60% chance of getting away with this unharmed. Roll it and see if they get away unharmed. Because uh, I used to play with this game master who was absolutely brilliant, apart from when it came to combat. And each combat round would literally take 45 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
We even reached a point where people would, they would have their go, and then they'd go and put the kettle on and make a drink for everyone, and they could make the drinks and come back, and we could have a drink before it came round to your turn again. He would scrupulously roll every single NPC on both sides, and then he would think, "Oh, right, well that weapon against that armor gets a bonus," and he'd be in the rule books, and it was all 100% above board and accurate. It was an unfortunately rules heavy game, but he did everything right, and I kind of swore from that point on that I would never make my players sit there and do nothing while I played two NPCs against each other. And if there is a combat to go on, the only people that really care about the outcome are the players.
Mm-hmm.
No one else cares. So my NPCs take a supporting role. The spotlight is on the players, so I would rather have them in the background. Minion versus minion sort of thing,
Right.
rather than um, you know. Sometimes I might have to have one weighed in to, give 2-to-1 odds in for the player because they are being swamped.
Right.
But that's me fixing a problem I created.
Right.
Because on the day, no one can control. If you roll absolutely terribly every single action, you suddenly become incapable of waving your sword at the right person. Then something has to give.
Yeah, that was a
So yeah, but for the most part, they don't take the limelight.
yeah, that was a situation I had running a Pathfinder game. Actually, was it was a Pathfinder Second Edition game, and the two of the players they went down in like the first round because things went bad for them. Um, So they were stuck doing nothing for like 30 minutes because nobody had any health potions or anything to bring them back up. Or really had like an opportunity to bring them back up because they were all focusing on trying to whittle down the enemies. So I think if I had included NPCs that the players could help, or that could help the players rather, than that might have helped mitigate those kinds of problems because I could just hand that control of the NPC off to the player. Is that something that you have done before, or is that something you have?
I haven't. I don't like giving the player an NPC to play. I To me, it would feel like it would break that suspension of disbelief. I would rather have my players stay in character.
Mm-hmm.
Having someone go down early in a fight is unfortunate. Um, but then I try not to include too much combat in my adventures because it can only ever end in tears.
Right.
And generally, the role playing stops when the dice start rolling. So I try not to. I would rather give you more weak enemies than an equal number of tough enemies, um, because weak enemies can grind you down. They can hurt you, but they're unlikely to take you out in that first round.
Right.
And once people start taking wounds, they are still in a position to make a strategic withdrawal. I wrote an adventure recently called The Caves of Ruin, I think, and there's probably a dozen of combat encounters, but they're things like small groups of kobolds and swarms of bats and rats and spiders and things. So the function they serve is they slow the characters down and they create a lot of noise.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is a really, really big, horrible creature later on, which is going to be a problem. And if you start making loads of noise, killing all these, you are going to be storing up trouble for yourself.
Right.
So there's a lot of fighting in it, but it's all minor things which you can back out of if you need to. So yeah, I try not to create real sort of hang in the balance battles early on, although any battle can go very, very poorly very, very quickly.
Yeah, of course.
It's just the danger of the dice, isn't it?
Yep, and that's like you mentioned earlier, roleplay stops whenever the dice start rolling. Which one of the things, like one of the things I had picked up early on in my career of like when I was just starting to get around to starting to design adventures for people, is a lot of people call it role playing with two L's because at that point you're just rolling the dice. So yeah, that's just something interesting that I have noticed, that the dynamics at the table change when combat begins.
Yeah, people stop talking. Their characters stop talking, and they just sit there and roll to hit and roll damage, or whatever the game system's version of that is. And I playing it was a game similar to D&D, and it had saving throws. And I asked the player, he wanted to make a save versus sort of, it was a fireball type of thing, and he wanted to make a save. So I said, all right, well, what are you doing then? Mm-hmm. And he kind of had his dice in his hands, and he looked at me kind of blankly, and I said, well, you can't save yourself against the fireball unless you dive for cover, or get down behind your shield, or no, you have to do something to get out of the blast. What are you doing? And it was completely alien. That it's, in his head, it was, you take X damage or roll the same throw and take half damage. It almost as if his character can just stand there and half the fire would miss.
Right.
But I wanted that. You may not be talking, but you can still roll. You can play the role, telling me the actions and the reactions and even mannerisms. Um, I had a brilliant player once where the NPC was telling them something, and his only response was, "I raised my eyebrow," and that's it. That's all his character did. But it told the NPC that what the story they'd just given them wasn't being believed,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a brilliant piece of role playing. And yeah, but that's how it should be. You're in control of your whole character, not just the sword arm and the voice box.
Right.
So, yeah, it's different groups play different ways. There's no right or wrong of it. But for me, I enjoy the NPCs, playing the NPCs, and interacting with the players, the players' characters, um, rather than rolling to hit and rolling damage.
And so.
And I come from a roll master background, which is really, really dangerous and has millions of skills. And so it is so easy to say, kind of, oh, I meet some peasants. I roll my public speaking, and you roll a good roll, and you expect the peasants to follow you into battle. And then, oh, it's I'm going to roll my small unit tactics and sort the soldiers out. And you're thinking, well, basically, you're not doing anything.
Right.
You're just all this long list of skills, and you're rolling the right skill at the right time, which isn't very fun. So yeah.
So, you mentioned that you would like to have your NPCs reacting to the player characters. Do you, with your 3-point method, you don't really you don't really leave room for that, but you write sort of reactions to potential things that the players might say in the adventures, in the scenes, or
yeah, I do, but that I would drop that into the point where I expect that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and sometimes I do it for what I think are humorous reasons. It's if the players come out with an absolute cliche, then I would make it that the NPC has already heard that 5 or 6 times. So yeah, I will. If there is a particular situation which is almost inevitably going to come up, then it was something you wrote. I'm sure it was you actually, where in one of the play tests, nearly all the player characters tried to hit on one of the NPCs.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really liked that idea. And there's a similar one. I've forgotten which game it's in, where it's talking about failing forward.
Mm-hmm.
And in the example, the one of the players tries to seduce a sort of city guard, and they fail the seduction roll, and so it says, well, what happens is they successfully, I think they've seduced the guard, but the guard's actually a serial killer, when they're off duty.
Oh,
and so so the player thinks that they've successfully seduced the guard, but the guard is a serial killer, and that's the person you grant the success at a future cost, and I quite like that. Zweihander does actually say it is a fail forward game,
right?
So you can grant a success at a future cost, as long as you remember to demand payment in some form or other.
Right.
Which is another way of solving that. They reached the locked door, but nobody's got skullduggery. So what do you do? Well, they can try something else, and if it shouldn't work, you let it work, but at a cost. So yeah, I will, add little bits of presumed lore in for NPCs in key situations where it could be important, but I don't put a lot in there. As you say, there isn't a lot in there that there isn't much room for that sort of thing.
Right.
And play styles vary. If you want to hack and slash your way through an adventure, then it doesn't matter what I write.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely like true. Like, you can write a situation where like the presumed outcome is that the players are going to ally with the NPC, one of the NPC factions. But if they don't really want to do that, then their chances are they're gonna try and fight them. Like, that is like in Pathfinder Kingmaker, for example, the video game. There is you come upon one map and there are two warring factions, a faction of mites and a faction of kobolds, and you can ally with either side or don't and fight them both. And it's really interesting to like think about that, like, because like it has both play styles and built into the game itself. But like with tabletop stuff, like you write that stuff in there, but the players, like, they might just take that third option or second option to fight them.
Yeah, something that it's colored the way I do things, where you say you meet me on the battlements. I sold 100 copies. So if you think that 30% of people might just completely ignore the woman in the bar, then that's 30%. That is literally 30 people that have had that adventure and completely ignored the woman in the bar.
Mm-hmm.
If 10% of people manage to completely avoid the guy out in the dark and or kill him without question, that's all of these things do happen because these adventures sell by the 100. I think my most popular sort of book I put out there has sold 2,000 copies now, 2,500 copies. Every possible outcome has happened, and I couldn't write every single possible outcome. The game master has had to improvise something.
Right.
But yeah, we write, when we write something, we are assuming we are going to sell hundreds of copies. So every option will come up, and you can either try and write every single possible outcome, in which case it'll be a very big book and it'll be the only adventure you'll ever write, or you let the game master do their job and play with it. It's a little bit of like, do you write scenes or do you write locations? I write scenes,
right.
And in a scene, I'm assuming I've got actors, and those actors are going to try and achieve certain things in the scene, and the scene ends when those things have been achieved.
Right.
The Free League, they write lots of their adventures in locations, and you can revisit a location. However, you can go to any location in any order as many times as you like, and the adventure will still work. So there are no scenes. It's kind of, here's the location, here's what can be discovered, what it looks like, here's what can be discovered, um, here's any consequences, and then it's the next location, and you can literally go wherever you like. It makes no difference to the outcome of the adventure. I do that because scenes imply a linear progression through the adventure,
Mm-hmm.
and to them that feels like railroading, because you're imposing an artificial thread through the adventure.
Yeah.
I try and avoid that. If we go right back to what I was saying at the beginning, the three things I have for the character is who they are, what they want, and what they're prepared to do for it. And they're kind of like clockwork soldiers. You can wind them up and let them go, and they will just do their thing, regardless of what the players do. And if the players completely ignored the woman in the bar or the guy in the dark, the events of that adventure will still happen. And normally at some point the characters will get swept up in those events, like it or not. In the last adventure I wrote, it's a little bit like the Trojan horse, sort of War of Troy, Trojan War sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
where if the characters do not interact with the adventure, then the castle gates get opened and the bad thing gets brought inside and the gates get shut. And from that point on, it is rather downhill rather fast.
Right.
Um, but the characters can choose to act or they can choose to not act, and the game master can give the characters some really interesting stuff to focus on while the bad thing is happening, if they want, just to make sure the bad thing happens without railroading the characters, because it's still resolvable right up until the last action.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just kind of like, oh yeah, this is the bad guy's plan, this is how it's going to play out, this is how it starts, and it goes. You wind it up and off it goes. So yeah, if you know what they want to do and why they want to do it, then it kind of avoids the railroad, which is where the problem with scenes is you're often assuming there is the setup to make the scene happen.
Right.
And I read a lot of Zweihander adventures, and they're almost all in acts and scenes. Even some of mine are. My earlier ones are in acts and scenes. But yeah, it's something I've moved away from, because it just assumes you've got the actors in place, which can constrain a game master.
Right, and it's not even necessarily always the case. Like, you could have, like, an NPC could have been killed or otherwise indisposed before you can get to that scene.
Yes. Yeah.
Or the players could have, like, upset that character to the point where, like, they don't want to work with them. Which was the thing that I tried to keep in mind when I was working on my adventure. Because there's a possibility that the characters will break into into one of the other characters' homes, and that would upset that character, obviously. And I had to keep that in mind. Like, they might not have a reason to be friendly with this character anymore. So it is.
I think you'd probably find it interesting if you looked at a Free League and adventure, and get a quick start or something and have a look at the way they construct theirs. It's very different to what we're used to in the library.
Yeah, Free League does Mutant Year Zero, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Tales from the Loop, Coriolis, Besson, what else?
Forbidden Lands.
Forbidden Lands and Simbaroon.
Yeah, because I do play Mutant Year Zero with Chuck over on the Defenders of Kobold every so often. So I think I'll look into that because actually I have Mutant Year Zero. So if I want to run it for my own groups, that's a thing I'll probably have to do at some point.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, I'm quite a fan of Tales from the Loop, and that's brilliant the way it constructs the adventures and the consequences and things like that. It's yeah, interesting. And again, that's all about people, very
mhm.
much about people.
Oh yeah, and as Adam, by the way, hello Adam, and everybody who came with Grim and Perilous for their raid. We haven't been ignoring you, I promise. Alien is the other one that Free League does.
Yes, of course.
Um, so it is getting to be about time for the next part of the show, which is we're doing like an adventure. We're building an adventure on air. Last time, Tyler and we decided that the adventure was going to take place in a port city called Port Blood, and that it was going to be a political intrigue type story. Port Blood has a mayor who is corrupt and who is sort of like the primary antagonist of the adventure. And we decided that this mayor we know is an Atzlin, because it's primarily an Atzlin city, and that the Port Blood has a problem where the highly regulated slash like illegal, almost borderline illegal thing is being imported called blood schnapps, which is highly addictive, and so we sort of like started touching on the NPCs for that one, but we didn't quite we didn't go into too much detail about them other than like the mayor is an Atzlin and the character who gets the players involved in the setting is also an Atzlin, or in the game is also an Atzlin. So I feel like this would be a good time to start working on maybe like filling out these characters using your 3-point method. So the first question, the first part of the 3-point method is, who are they, correct?
Yes.
So this mayor, we know that they're an Atzlin. We know that they're the mayor, but like, what's their name?
I have no idea. But so, rather like using your method, the name comes at the end. Okay, so we've got their ancestry,
right?
And we know their profession. They're the mayor. The name I would probably derive from the tone of the adventure. So I often would put that in. Sorry, right at the end, or near the end, when I actually know the NPC a bit better. So because some people will have slightly amusing names. Some people, they might end up with a moniker which they're known by.
Right.
Because the real core of it is, what do they want? That's the bit. Once you've worked out what they want, and then, because this mayor could be, it's a bit like Batman and Bruce Wayne. He's got two names.
Right.
Depending on who he is and in what situation, that name is changing. So yeah, because I didn't write this starting bit, and I didn't see this bit of your last stream because I was on a round table. Yes. So
what we do know about this character is that they are allied with both the there is also a union for like a laborers union, which we were calling the stevedores union, but it, like, we could probably call it something else because like that's just the placeholder name, and the merchants guild. Primarily the Merchants Guild is primarily who the mayor deals with, and is basically the political power backing the mayor with the like from the economic side.
Right.
And so, like, what? So I guess we probably then try and figure out from there, like, what does this mayor want? Maybe we can come back to the mayor and maybe focus on what the guild wants.
So this really addictive stuff,
Mm-hmm.
who is bringing it in, and what are they gaining from it?
Well, we do know that it's the guild is bringing it in, because it's the shipping guild,
Yeah.
is bringing it in. Who are they? What do they want? What they probably want with the shipping guild is maybe to actually be able to, because I know that we decided that one of the twists was that there was going to be somewhere that's now producing the ingredients, which is the Death Hedge's blood roses, is being grown now in the city itself. So maybe they want to start legitimizing it, so that they can sell it without worrying about the guards without having to bribe the guards.
If there's a chance of a local production, then the people doing the importing are likely to lose out.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see there is a potential conflict there. Now, if the mayor was behind the local production, he could be trying to cut out the merchants in a big double cross.
Oh.
And that would then, it would make sense for him to be trying to use the characters to make life more difficult for the importers.
Well, so
using
the hook that we had was at the time was the players get drawn into it when they notice, like, they go to a local tavern that was selling blood schnapps, and a barroom brawl breaks out over the blood schnapps that are there because they're like run out of blood schnapps, and these people they want to get the blood schnapps, and then they break out into a barroom brawl style thing over it. And then one of the people who's like been watching the place is a political opponent of the mayor, or belongs to the political party that's an opponent of the mayor, and they sort of like bring them into the web of the conspiracy there. So I could see that working, and like maybe the mayor, when the players interact with the mayor's like, yeah, I kind of actually want to hire you to do this instead. That could be a thing.
Yes. So yeah, it would look like what the mayor wants is to get control of the blood schnapps supply into his own. He wants total control of that supply.
Mm-hmm.
I would be inclined to create an NPC to sit at the head of the Merchants Guild.
Mm-hmm.
So you've actually got the winner and the loser of this conflict there as NPCs. If the mayor's successful and he gets control of the blood schnapps, then the head of the Merchants Guild is going to be the person that loses out. If the head of the Merchants Guild succeeds and the mayor loses out, and the characters, both of them are going to want to manipulate the characters for their own benefit.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would be inclined to do at the moment. Now, the Stevedores Union, now I would have said that the Merchants Guild and the mayor both want to get the workers hooked on the blood schnapps as a way of controlling them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a way of breaking the Stevedores Union. That's what I'm seeing here. So I would maybe. Now I'm trying to think. What would the mayor do? We know he wants to get control of this. How would he get control of it? He would get control of it by interfering with the Merchants Guild's operations. I would have the mayor. Yes, that's what the mayor wants. He wants to disrupt the Merchant Guild's operations now that he's got his own homegrown blood schnapp supply. So he could initially become a quest giver as such, where he wants the characters to investigate a potential what he's calling a smuggling ring.
Right.
Importing this illegal blood schnapps. And maybe he's going to get them to use the Stevedores Union to get access to the shipping, the loading and unloading of the ships, so they can search it. That brings that in.
And
yeah, so
one of the things we had thought about with the mayor and the Stevedores Union is that they were also allies, in the sense that like the mayor has done things to strengthen union practices.
Yeah, that would fit in with him trying to break the Merchants Guild.
Mm-hmm.
So he could be a false friend to the Stevedores Union. So for now, he wants the Union on his side.
Mm-hmm.
So when he can expose the Merchants Guild as the importers, smugglers of the blood schnapps, he can claim he's doing it for the workers' benefit. Although they don't know, he's going to want to keep his private manufacturing of blood schnapps secret. So maybe once it's known that there are so many addicts of blood schnapps in the port. I don't how well known is that it is addictive, or is it only just becoming apparent?
I think it might be easier if it's like easier to justify, I guess, is the word I'm looking for here. Maybe not the correct word, but it's the closest word I can think of. Like, maybe it's easier for to explain. There we go. To explain why people are keeping an eye on what blood schnapps is doing. There are people who know it's bad, but they're not exactly. They don't know how bad. And so the idea is that they're here to keep an eye to figure that out, and so it's the effects of it are probably just now starting to be shown.
Yeah. So the mayor is supporting the union. I can definitely see a conflict of a manipulative conflict between the merchants, the head of the Merchants Guild, and the mayor. The Stevedores Union, if he's supporting that, I could see that as a political play
Hmm.
to um, to help bring down the Merchants Guild. Um, and then, in which case, having the mayor in control of the local supply of blood schnapps could be an act of kindness to help the people that are already uh, addicted to it, supposedly.
Right.
Whereas in fact, it's still all he wants to do is be able to supply it himself.
Right. He wants that money to go
Um,
to his pocket directly.
oh yes, that's him. So we know what he wants. He wants control of this market, and he wants to eliminate the merchants. How is he going to achieve that? He's going to bring down the Merchants Guild, and yes, he's going to bring down the guild, shut off their supply, and legitimize his own source of blood schnapps. Now, the Merchants Guild, if you have a head of the Merchants Guild who doesn't know that the mayor is working against him, so the mayor is going to want to use agents to carry most of this out, and that's where the characters come in. The head of the Merchants Guild also wants to have control of the blood schnapp supply.
Hmm.
Um, doesn't want to work against the mayor because he thinks the mayor is on his side. So he's probably going to want to hire the characters to find the source of the homegrown blood schnapps and stop that supply or destroy the supply of homegrown stuff to protect their own.
Hmm.
And you've got the characters then caught in between the two. So the head of the Merchants Guild what he wants is to protect his supply and destroy the local competitor. The mayor obviously wants to destroy the importation and promote his local supply. So there's your conflict.
Okay.
Um, and the Stevedores Union, they might actually be the only people that know both sides of what's going on because both parties actually need them to do the work. So they become an essential resource for the characters. The characters have to interact with different parts of the Union, which is also dealing with increasing numbers of its members being addicted to blood schnapps.
Right.
Yes, I can see the adventure in here. I'm just trying to get my head around the actual NPCs.
So what?
But this is what I need to do, is to find out what the people actually want and how far they're prepared to go to get it.
So
and how.
What I'm seeing right now then is like we had lined out 5 different NPC or 5 different like NPCs. We had the Hook NPC, we had the mayor, we had the guild, and then we had another NPC who was supposed to be friends with like was supposed to be like part of the allies with the Hook character, but it turns out that he's the one who's growing the homegrown supply of blood schnapps. And then we had like a Stevedores Union character. We hadn't really like outlined it other than like the character existed. So what I'm thinking is maybe what we could do here is roll in the Hook character to the Stevedores Union to sort of get the party pulled in there, and roll in the supposed ally character into the mayor as you suggested. So that would leave us with just the three NPCs to worry about right now: the mayor, the guild, and the union.
Yes. Those are your principal characters, principal players.
So
the weakest one at the moment is the Stevedores Union, because I can't see what they really want apart from better paying conditions for their union members.
so
the others, I can see what they want.
What they might want is maybe to stop the blood schnapps trade completely. Like maybe that's like their thing, is they don't want people, because blood schnapps is destroying their community. So maybe they want to they want
that. I think that's actually a brilliant idea, because then you could actually have you in any kind of group, you are going to have people that are going to advocate direct action, and people that are going to advocate a political solution. So if you have a tension within the union between those that wants to actually start, burning warehouses and taking direct action to stop the trade. If innkeepers are stocking it, then having these people, dragging them out and kneecapping them or something. That is at the same time it's achieving the union's goal, but probably to the horror of the head of the union.
Right.
So yes, I think you got a really good idea there of the fact that they want to just stamp out this trade altogether, and the irony that they get paid for actually the production of it because they're doing the work, and they need to eat, so they can't actually refuse the work.
Right. Yeah. No, that hurts because it hits close to home.
Yeah. Then you also have an option there that's if one side of it, if one faction within the union actually is advocating direct action, and your player characters or the players are in favor of a direct action type game, or the game master is, then you have a route they can follow. If you've got a game master that's much more in favor of a role played out social interaction type game, then they can actually support the other faction within there. So yes, the union becomes the vessel inside which the adventure takes place, because whichever side the players decide their characters will work with will still be within the union. And you could actually create two NPCs in there, so a sort of almost like a direct action unionist and a political unionist, who will become the friend of the characters, because they're only going to pick one side. They aren't going to pick both sides.
Right.
And you could introduce if you had a direct personal conflict with those two characters, an argument over a table in an inn, or with these two people fighting their corner, kind of verbally verging on the personal attack, that is likely to polarize your characters into supporting one or the other. And the game master could actually almost decide which way they'd rather they went, and make that NPC the more pleasant of the two, and give the player characters the free choice of the nice person or the horrible person.
Right.
And you can kind of guess which one they're going to go for, so that they have the illusion of choice.
Right.
But the game master has the real choice, because they can choose whether this is a following the road of direct action.
Right. So what it sounds like then is we have two NPCs. We have one who represents the political side of the adventure.
Yes.
In the Steve George
Yes.
Union, and then we have one who functions as the direct action character.
Yes.
So we had said that it might be a barroom brawl, but it's sounding more like you're suggesting that maybe that the interaction is not a full-out brawl in the bar, but maybe like the two of them are
No, a verbal, more of a verbal assault.
Mm-hmm.
When an argument gets so heated it becomes personal. That
Right.
is the situation I'm imagining. We gain a little bonus here if you have those two. Do you know the phrase "chalk and cheese"?
No,
It
I
means
don't.
two people that are complete. Okay, it just means that they are complete and utter opposites.
Mm-hmm.
And if these two characters are complete, their personalities are complete opposites. Their vision for the future are complete opposites.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever is the apparent winner of this conflict, you have a potential traitor, then a betrayer.
Mm-hmm.
So this character features at the beginning, who then doesn't like the way things are going, and maybe would accept the 30 pieces of silver to betray their own side, because they think what's being done is being done wrong,
Yeah,
or the wrong thing is being done.
I can see that.
If you're going to talk it out, then maybe they think that the union is being, sold away from underneath them. In the negotiated solution, it's too many compromises are being made. If it's the direct action, then you may have the other person thinking that too many lives are being lost, or innocent people are being hurt. So you can circle that round and have a sort of 30 pieces of silver selling out their own side for what they see as the greater good. So this character isn't disposable. You create them, but they're not disposable, because one of the two will play this role later on.
Right. That is very good. Because I like the idea. I like the idea of introducing characters before they become relevant. Like introducing that information, it like sort of as a type of foreshadowing, because that's what it is ultimately. Is you're foreshadowing if this character is still going to be important later on. All right. So
And also, because we've got two factions, you don't know who they will be betrayed to.
yeah.
So you've got two potential betrayers, and you've got two potential powers that they may.
Right, like I can see, for example, the one who's more into direct action. I can see them betraying for the Merchants Guild. So what they do is they go and light the mayor's warehouse on fire. But I could also equally see them going from the, like, if they allied with the mayor, going and lighting the shipping on fire, the ships on fire that are importing it, for example. And then
Yes.
with the political side of things, I could see them going. I could see the one who wants more of the political, peaceful option going, taking the money and then feeding the information to either side about what the players are about
Yes.
to do.
Yes. So yeah, that gives us 4 NPCs.
Okay. None of them have names yet, though. We know what they want.
No, well, we know what they want, and we're getting down to what they're prepared to do to achieve it. I'm not 100% familiar with this race, so I don't know what their name should sound like.
Well,
This
Atslin,
this ancestry.
the
Yeah,
Atslin, they're like lizard folk. The
yeah, I thought so.
the 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 implied setting lore uh is not I'm not particularly too keen on the implied setting lore in the Zweihander core rulebook, but let's see, maybe it'll help if we define what Port Blood's region is like. Is it like a Germanic region, a Gallic region, a Celtic region, or something else entirely? Like, what kind of region is it? I guess that might inform our naming conventions. Because, like, for example, if we do a Gallic nation, it'll be more Frenchy. If we do more French type names. If we do a Germanic type region, it's gonna be more Germanic names. Like Hildegard or something.
Hmm. Right. So okay. So their cities are massive, some ranging into tens of thousands of residents, millions of tons of stone, pyramid. Oh, okay. It's Oh, right. Okay. So they're using kind of like three syllable type names here.
Yeah.
Oh God.
And we can freely ignore that naming convention if we want, because this is like our own thing, and also that's gonna be really hard to we don't want to make it difficult for names to be pronounced.
Yes, I know. Yeah, I'm not brilliant at coming up with stuff right on the fly like this. They're not a race I'm particularly familiar with. Right, so
Yeah, if you want to come back to the Atslin characters later, we can do that, because we haven't decided
yeah,
ancestries
yeah.
for the political union guy and the merchant. We haven't decided any information on what they are, other than that they exist. But we know that the Atslin. Sorry.
I would be. See, I wouldn't give them ancestries explicitly. I would be more inclined to suggest that their ancestry is something that the characters would be sympathetic towards. That gives the game master the option of sort of picking an ancestry. So if you've got a bunch of elves, you don't want someone that is antagonistic to elves. If you've got dwarves, you don't want something antagonistic to dwarves.
Right, and I mean, a lot of that does assume the settings. It assumes that the setting has dwarves and elves as being, for example, being antagonistic towards one another. Which is something that I personally find boring and don't write into my adventures at all.
Yeah. I almost never play anything that isn't human. Mainly because I've never been anything except human.
Right.
To my knowledge. I also almost exclusively play male characters, and yet my NPCs I rarely ever give any kind of gender to, because these are things which the game master can easily fill in with the kind of characters they want to play. Which means very occasionally I will Meet Me on the Battlements. There, I wanted a sort of traditional couple because that was the backstory.
Right.
For the most part, I try and avoid these sort of things.
So yeah, this is not going to be. Basically, we could pick anything because if I was writing it, it wouldn't be there.
Right.
That's not the way my brain works. I can normally do stuff quite quickly, but then when you start trying to nail me down to facts, most of these things I would either not include, or I would wait until I was really well developed with the entire adventure and see, does it need to be anything?
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, if there is going to, if I want to create a emotional bond at any point, particularly with our talker, not fighter, um, at that point you are probably going to want a ancestry, which and say even gender that, or attitudes that will make the character attractive to the player characters, um, as opposed to making them an ogre,
Right.
or which might make conversation difficult. The Stevedore might employ plenty of ogres because they do the heavy lifting, but the talker, of NPC is less likely to be one of them.
So maybe they're a halfling.
If we're talking, so if this city is a complete melting pot, so where anything is an option,
Yeah.
what I would like you to say is describe the function of the NPC, and tell the game master to pick someone that is likely to get a sympathetic response. And if you had an ogre and a halfling, and those are the two facing off, although the ogre is the one that might be overbearing and offensive and aggressive and demanding action, the halfling could show extreme bravery simply in standing up, for their position. So yeah, we can have a halfling. There's nothing wrong with halflings.
Okay. Um. Okay, so they're a halfling. Do we want to give them a gender, or do we want to leave their gender ambiguous and let the game master
No, leave it alone.
leave it alone?
There's no point in shutting a door.
Mm-hmm.
I would leave it open.
Okay. So what?
Which means we can give them really vague names as well, like Joe.
Yeah, Joe. Yeah, I like
Not,
that.
I'm not saying not Joe, but
No,
but that sort of thing, where it is neither.
Like we could do, for example, we could probably do Morgan.
Yeah.
A halfling named Morgan. Let's see. What kind of do we want to give him a last name, or are we just gonna be satisfied with his first names?
For now, let's leave it at first.
Okay.
We can always, cross T's and dot I's afterwards, but it becomes easier to talk about the NPCs once they have got a name.
Right. So what we know
instead of just the talky one and the fighty one.
Right. So what we know then is that we have a halfling named Morgan, who is the one who wants to solve things politically.
Yes.
In the Union. Okay. And I know that I wanted the direct action character. I wanted that character specifically to be an Atzlin as well. So that way we have a character who's not necessarily a antagonistic Atzlin, like the mayor might be. Atslin named. We'll come up with the Atslin's name later because we decided to hold off on that. So maybe for the shipping guild, something that I like to do is I like to put characters like who, when we're nailing down ancestries, I like to put characters who defy expectations of the genre in that position. So like for example, I have a Grendel innkeeper named what was his name? I think it was Hercules. Yeah, his name is Hercules. But he's not like corpulent or anything. Like he works out, and no, his name was Yor. Yor, he works out and stuff, like, and he's like very like muscular, and so that's like that's the kind of thing I like to do, is put in characters who don't necessarily who sort of defy those expectations. So what do you think about this shipping guild, the shipping merchant guild character? Do you have any thoughts on ancestry for them with that information, or?
Yeah, okay. So the merchant guild, I would say that's an Atlan.
Also an Atlan.
And yeah, it would make sense if it's that kind of city. Then I think the higher the people in the sort of higher strata of society would probably be. But no, I can't actually say is it Acer Tilia is one of the types there. And it's described as the cold alien reptilian intellect. And it says they serve as artisans, priests, and scholars. But your merchant guild leader, for some reason, I would really like them if they were an absolute music lover. Spending, assuming they're fairly affluent, spending ridiculous amounts of money in collecting music boxes from different places, from different cultures, trying to experience all these different kinds of music. So although you're seeing them as a kind of manipulative, this guild merchant guild leader, they're powerful. They're also, their mind is kind of almost always distracted by, some kind of music, some little tangible piece of different cultures, whilst being a pillar of their own culture. Yes, I don't know why I want this one to be a musician, but or not necessarily a musician, maybe a completely dreadful musician, and that might be an absolute, cause of shame and disappointment and dissatisfaction in life. But a hoarder of music, a collector of music. But yeah, a completely terrible musician, can't hold a tune.
Okay. I like that idea. So let's try and figure out now, I guess, because we do still need 3 names. One for the Merchant Guild, one for the direct action, and one for the mayor. Let's see. So let's consider their role in the story. Recently, I was watching Batman Returns, that 1990s Tim Burton Batman film, and one of the characters who's an antagonist is Max Schreck, who is named after the German actor Max Schreck from the 1920s. His whole thing is he wants to build this power plant to suck out, to actually act as a giant battery. So that's his main motivation in the story, is that he wants to get the political maneuvering to do so. And so the mayor kind of strikes me as being similar to Max Schreck. So maybe we should let's see. Max Schreck was played by Christopher Walken. So maybe we could do like take some inspiration to like snag the name, because one of their techniques that we didn't discuss that I sometimes use is whenever I'm trying to create a character and I'm at a roadblock, what I'll do is I'll look to popular media that I've consumed and borrow ideas from them. So in this case, the mayor is a Max Schreck type character. So let's see, one of the things that we could possibly do with that is maybe take Walken's last name and Atslin named something Walken.
Okay. I think, I don't know why, but I would like his first name to include at least two B's, an L, and an O. For some reason, these round letters and wide letters seem to fit a mayor. Maybe I'm seeing him just being quite sort of corpulent. So, and it seems they kind of have these complicated names with far too many letters in them. Something kind of like Bolo. What was the last name?
Walken.
Walkin. So Bolo Walkin is your mayor.
So how's that spelled?
Bolo.
Oh, Bolo. Okay. Bolo. Okay.
Yeah, Bolo.
Bolo Walken. I like that. Okay. Now for this Hook character, I call him Hook character because that's what they were when I was writing my notes.
Yep.
This is the one who's into the direct action. Let's see. Can you think of any particular characters from like things that you've read or watched that would fit a direct action type character?
What I'm reading at the moment, the direct action character would then be some kind of variation on either Isaac or Richard.
What we could do is we could do Isaac Richardson, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isaac Richardson. All right, and for our...
And Morgan's last name can be York.
Morgan York?
York.
Okay, that works. Yeah, I like that. And then for the shipping guild, what do you want to go with that? Let's see.
Who's your favorite musician?
That is a wonderful question because I don't. Let's see, I have a lot of different ones. Let's see. There's the. There is Steam Powered Giraffe. That's a band. The Cog is Dead is a band. Creature Feature is a band. Let's see. Super Eternus and the Ensemble of Shadows is a band. Let's see. But I don't know.
Presumably, in these bands, there is a songwriter involved.
There is.
Can you think of who?
That's the funny thing, because I don't like think too hard about, like, I just know that I like these bands when they play their music. I don't know that, like, I don't know the members. I don't know the band name. I just know the band name. I don't know many of the band members. Like, I know.
It's fine. You were listing those bands. It was like you were speaking a completely different language. I have no interest in music at all. I don't listen to it. So But I thought it would. I thought you were going to come up with a name of a musician, and it would have been. We could have twisted it away to form the music dubbing NPC.
What we could do, there was one time when I was writing a horror prose about a character who played a violin, like obsessively, and I think that character's name was I think Andrew Zahn, which I borrowed the Zahn part from Timothy Zahn, who wrote a bunch of Star Wars novels that were in the library that I was in when I was in high school a lot. So the name stuck. So maybe we could do something like that.
Yeah.
So maybe their last name is Zahn, and let's see. I guess maybe the
Amadeus Zom.
Amadeus. I like that.
Mm.
Amadeus, because that's classical composer.
Yeah.
I don't know what their last name. What Amadeus is. I don't know what his last name was. I almost want to say Bach, but that feels wrong. But Amadeus Zahn. There we go. Yeah, and so we have our NPCs filled out. It looks like, and I'm pretty happy with that. And we are at the 2-hour mark, so we can probably start calling it here. Thank you so much for coming on. Did you have anything you wanted to specifically that you wanted to plug, like Lowborn, or anything?
What like Lowborn? I don't know. Maybe Lowborn. Yeah. Issue 3. Well, the first 3 are out. The 4th issue, we are just waiting on the proof because the proofs are taking forever. So Lowborn 4 should be out. That will complete our first year. So yeah, Lowborn's a good one. Yes, everyone should go and buy Lowborn, or buy 2 of each.
Yeah,
yes,
buy 2 of each, and keep an eye out for in the Graham Paradise Library. Keep an eye out for things that Peter is releasing. Like Meet Me on the Battlements is part of his 1-page adventure series, which is really well constructed. Go ahead.
Oppressive Vampires is the better one. My
is the
favorite one of those. Oppressive Vampires. Yes. There's 7 of those 1-pages at the moment. An 8th one is coming out in January. But Oppressive Vampires is my favorite one of those.
Let's see, and then
it's definitely a horror one.
You also did a role-playing system, right? 3 Deep.
Yep, 3 Deep. That is a fairly rules-light D6 system. I have done a lot of stuff. If you're going to start saying, "Oh, yeah, I've done this, I've done that," I've done a lot of stuff. But yeah, 3 Deep, that was deal of the day this week, and it's on sale at the moment. If you go to the drive-through sales page, there's a kind of sorry you missed it sale because so many people have got it in their wish list or in their basket. So just to keep the sort of let them still get a discount if they want to get it. But yeah, 3 Deep is, I've been playing that since about 1986 for myself, and I stupidly the first thing I released on drive-through was the game. Rather than learning how it all works, I just jumped straight in and the game system. But yeah,
all right.
But yeah, I've done lots.
Yeah.
If you find parts per million on drive-through, there's quite a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, and that's your Twitter handle as well, right?
Yeah.
It's like at parts per, like PPM Gamer.
Yeah. I'm not very good with social media, so I had to think of something on the spot, and as you can tell, I'm not good at names.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
not my strong suit.
That's okay. All right, so yeah, next episode is going to be in a couple of weeks. Hopefully, it's going to be Sean Van
Cool.
Damme. I'll have to coordinate with him to see if he's free for that. It'll be back here on the Zweihander channel. You can find me on Twitter at DMIRingDB, or on Twitch also at DMIRingDB, where I sometimes stream games. And keep an eye out for my own upcoming adventure. Hopefully it'll be next month, maybe this month, I don't know. We're waiting on proofs for that one as well. The Beast of Jellinsmeyer. All right, and until next time, y'all. We'll see you around.